And we are live. Yes. So if I do this, I go there, click here. Oh, that's perfect. I love that. That works. And here we are. Some Spoiler review. TV/CoachFliperon, and then we should be good to go. Just this should be working. This should be working. All the things should be working. All right. This, and that. And I believe we are live. Are we? Yes, no. I guess we are. All right. So I'm gonna have another finishing touch to this. So Linear Recruiter was a rare. We've got Minerax Sorcerer Lethal Diligence. So we added it in the draft metrics, did we? Yeah, Minerax Sorcerer is there. Okay, so I believe we're set and we're ready to review other cards, and might as well go with the cards that were reviewed today and start from there. It's just going to be a very casual stream. And there's already Panda Chills in the main channel streaming, so we should be able to do something nice. But in the meantime, let's just start right in. Aspect of the Squirrel. This is 3 costs, 1 wild threshold. Quick action. It is a rare, and it reads Suckable Miner. Target troop gets +3. +3, and all sucketed powers of this. Oh, that's nice. At first I read it and I thought that this was until the end of the turn, but this is permanent. This is a permanent +3/+3 is not socket. It's a lot better than I thought it was. Crouch tree. Create an aspect of the squirrel and put it into your hand. This is a very interesting card. What do we make of this? What do we make of this? Here. Okay, so key features. This is quick, speed. That's the first thing. Permanent modification. flexible socket. And what else do we have here? I guess it goes without saying, but look for ways to enable scrounge links. Alright. So these are the characteristics. So this is a very expensive combat trick. However, it is permanent. It is not and it has a socket. So the socket can be a lot of things, and I feel like this would be worth it. I don't know that this is a B. The fact that it replaces itself is just extremely good as well. In limited, you tend to trade a lot of troops, and I can only imagine that if you resolve this, you give something +3/+3, and then you get one back with a random socket in it. But even, you know, random socket is just mostly upside, unless, you know, we're in a very rare case scenario. And yeah, I think we didn't see the whole set yet, so I'm not sure if this is a first pickable, but I feel like a quick action +3/+3 for 3, we're getting decent stat for what we're paying, considering that we're getting this as a permanent bonus. Remember, we were getting for 4 cost +2/+2 and crush, and we were playing that in most wild decks, and it had 2 wide thresholds to it, so I think this is a winner. This feels pretty strong and limited. Let's just yeah, maybe that's a B-. I mean, even if we don't, the C+. Let's go C+. It's okay. You might not be, you know, seeing that and say, oh well, I'm going for wild this time around, but if there's any way for you to get it back after you resolve it, when you do scrounge, this is great. This is just super great. And if you have ways to create dreadlings, and spoiler alert, there was one very easy way to generate 4 dreadlings, then this card should become a game winning. I mean, in the right deck, in the average deck, this is C+, but if you have dreadling creation, this becomes extremely good. So in the average deck, this card is a good combat trick. Is also permanent with some flexibility to it. If you have ways to fill the crypt, it becomes a win condition. Because you know, if you're playing Diamond, for instance, and you have sockets to spare, you're going to put flight. You know, +3/+3 in flight on attack is no small deal. It's like even a 1/1 becomes a 4/4 flyer, and if you get it back, and you might just be able to do it again. Well, it depends, right? There's one chance out of 4 that you get the same socket when you create a card back. So the second one is slightly worse, but come on, this is still a good card. Hey, Stewie, how are you doing tonight? Welcome back to the stream. That's still a pretty cool card. I don't think this is playable in constructed. There may be a world with cost too high setup and opportunity cost too high for power level. This is clearly intended for limited. I don't think in constructed we're playing a +3/+3. Even permanent with a socket, it's really hard to sell this, because there's going to be a lot of efficient removal like quick around, so you're just going to target something and it's going to die before this resolves. The good thing is that if you scrounge it, even though they kill your target, you're still getting one back. So there's that. But you still need to have troops on the board for this to be good. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure where this belongs in Constructed. I don't think it will be played in Constructed, but it's a hell of a cool card in Limited, for sure. Yeah, very interesting. Piece of cards that we have right there. So I'll be adding them quickly. We'll talk about them next Sunday morning on the show, but just wanted to get some legs going on these cards, because we're going to have a packed show on Sunday morning, and yeah, this is going to be. I don't want to spend time writing the cards and getting my head around them live on the show, so we're going to. That's why I'm doing extra stream this week, maybe even another one before the Sunday show. So fired stream going over recent spoiled cards. TV/CoachFliperon. Okay. And here, spoilers. All right. And next one is Fang of Lausanne. Alright, what do you do? 5 cost, no threshold, no faction, artifact, troop, and it is a construct. It is a common, and tree, and it reads Suckable Miner. And what do we have here? Deploy another target targeted troop you control gets +1/+1. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. It's not the end of the world, but when you don't have a target, a 3/3/4/5 with a minor socket doesn't feel that great. However, it could be 3/3 flight when attack. I guess that could be possible. 4/3 with crush for 5, it's not that great. So it really feels that you need to give it to land a +1/+1 a decent amount of time for this to be really, providing you with the stats. Like, cause 4/4 for 5 with a sucketed power is okay, as we've seen in the past, but having to have a valid target for this, another target sucketed troop nonetheless. There's not, there are sucketed troops that you can play in Limited, but there's usually not a ton. And this one is one of them, and it's 5 cost, so I'm not sure, right? Key features, let's say it's flexible, socket, cares about sucketed troop, not artifacts, but sucketed troops, and that's pretty much it. The constructs are starting to mimic the forms of living creatures. Why? Professor of Primals, Merton. Huh. Okay. Let's see. So, how do we like this animated? This feels like a D. Like, if you have a lot of sucketed troops, it might be okay-ish if you're missing playables, but for the most part, you wouldn't straight up add this to your deck, I feel. We'll see if this is right once we have the whole set, of course, the whole picture, but first impression would be that Yeah, I guess with low stats for cost. The floor on the card is very low, and the ceiling is not that high. Only play it if you have a good number of Sagada troop that cost less than 5. That's just not powerful. Not powerful enough. So I'd say that I'm not adding this into the matrix, even though it's a command, because we're not going to use this as a signal for anything. Right now we add Minor Axe Sorcerer and Underwater Oppression as a possible signal. Ruby, I'm not quite sure I put it there, but we might just... Balan might just... yeah, I don't know. Is it good enough to be a signal? We'll see once we have a full set. I'll just put this as a maybe for now. Well, these are all maybes, but Cloud Runner and Certain Sage are very, very good card, and I can't imagine that these will not be signal if you see them late for it that Sapphire is open, because I'm pretty sure if I build it in a Sapphire deck, I just want these two cards in as many copies as I can, and that's it. And you have a very good deck. Okay, so Fang of Nuzan, not a lot going on here, but we'll see. So there's a cycle of favor that were spoiled on Verdict of the Ancient King podcast, and they're all super cool, and I can't wait to play with them. So the first one that we have here is Blood's Favor. It's a 3 cost, 1 blood threshold. Basic action. It doesn't have any trait. It is an uncommon, and it reads: choose one. Each opposing champion discards a card at random. Draw 2 cards and lose 2 health, or void each opposing champion's crypt. Point. Gain 1 health. Whoa, not health for each troop voided this way. Lots of things going on here. Let's just flexible. 3 modes. Draw 2 cards. Card draw. What else? And yeah, so we're either spending life to draw a card, we're either gaining life by removing the crypt, or we make them discard a card at random. Discard random is a lot better than just straight up making them discarding. It's variance though, so you know, discard's effect tends to be good when they're later in the game, when your opponent doesn't have a lot of cards. But as a followed plan, it could be okay. I feel that you're only going to do this if you already know or have a very, good grasp of what they have in hand. For the most part, I think this is just going to be a divination for an oracle song for blood, and this is very, very cool. This is very powerful. We've seen many control deck playing Rika's Song just to draw 2 cards. Of course, this one comes with a disadvantage with 2 costs of your life. However, paying most decks would be happy to pay 2 life to draw cards a good portion of the time. So, and if you're putting that into your deck, you can also be mindful that this is going to happen and build your deck in consequence. I have this, keep this in mind when playing a card. The other thing is that I can see with a card is that you can offset the health loss. Sorry. By with your champion power that might be gaining your health. You might be choosing to play this with vampires, for instance, would be great. We're losing Vampire King with a rotation in standard, but we will keep the Vampire Prince for sure. So if you're playing heavy blood deck and you have vampires, this is still fairly decent, and there are other ways to gain health as well. So I'm not too in blood. Gaining health is usually not that big of an issue if you want to. So to me, this is just draw 2 cards for 3 resources with 1 blood threshold, with other modes that may be relevant. We've seen many times in X where being able to remove the opponent's script was fairly significant. There's multiple archetypes where this is. It's also in blood, and this is the best shard to be playing if you want to put troops in their crypt by removing them from the board. So at some point later in the game, if you're under pressure and you've been exchanging blows with your opponent and there's a few troops in the crypt, this might just be void your crypt and gain 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 life and even more. And if that's the case, it might just be too bad. The fact that you have the option though, the fact that if you have a good grasp of what they have in hand, you can just remove something from there, and if not, you can draw 2 cards, and if not, you can void their crypt and hopefully gain a decent amount of health, a small to a decent amount of health. All these things are not too powerful together, but having flexibility on a card is and that kind of flexibility is pretty great. There are times where making them discarding their last card is going to be way better than drawing 2 cards. But there's a lot of time where using this to just draw 2 cards is going to be great. It's going to help fuel your deck, and I'm expecting control decks playing blood that are not playing Sapphire to be playing this card in a few copies. I wouldn't be surprised. In limited, drawing 2 for 2 health is perfectly fine. Having the option to remove troops from the crypt is fine as well for some health gain. We've seen times and time again that the crypt in limited tends to fill out pretty quickly. There's a mechanic with dreadlings that will still be in limited, that if you encounter and you're playing this is perfect. The fact that it doesn't void your own crypt though is a bit of a problem, because if you're playing dreadling, I'm pretty sure you would want to trade like 10 dreadlings for 10 life. But this is still, most of the time just drawing 2 cards is going to be the mode, and it could just be draw 2 and pay 2 life for 3. It's not the end of the world, but it's still fairly efficient with the small added bonus. So let's see, card draw with fringe. 2 other fringe modes. There's definitely going to be things that cares about crypt and constructed in both formats, so immortal and standard. We just have to think about the Yuluja decks that we already faced in the past. There's Kagulichu decks that do a decent amount of things with their crypt. There's Rutherford Banks that cares about its scripts as well. We just got spoiled the Daughter of the Poet. That is another card that cares about crypts. So during a tournament where there's many rounds, I'm pretty sure at some point there's going to be something that cares about a crypt that's going to be relevant, where we'll still have the Xentats Manis, a constant that will be in standard, and it's still very powerful. And might just it's an engine on its own, and that can very well be something that could be played in a control shell with blood in Immortal as well. So. Yeah, I think there's going to be enough things happening related to the crypt that could be okay. Even once in a while removing all cards for Winter Moon can be good. At some point they have so many good options that just removing the options, a good portion of their crypt might just be too bad. But for the most part, it's just trying to card, man. Trying 2 cards, that's good. We love drawing cards. I think this is a C minus though for limited. Drawing 2 cards for 3. Is something that can be in formats are not too aggressive. Will there be control offensive decks in limited that would want to play such a card? That's the big question, right? Because in your limited control deck, when we have these in that format, having 1 or 2 of these is great. It's just fuel your cards and you can stall the board and get card advantage and eventually win with that. And that's a fair way to win games in limited. The problem is that the limited format that we have right now is way too fast for that. You would never play a card like that. However, if in the new format, depending on what happens, we may have some archetypes that are more controlling and slower. And if that happens, a card like that can be played. So it's not, it really depends on the speed of the format here. So we'll see what happens with the speed of the format. Since we're still hitting set 5 and there's still a decent amount of good review cards in set 5, I think I would just put this as D+, saying that playable card draw with some options that may become relevant as the format develops. These options start to matter. This card is likely to be played in blood control decks that don't play Sapphire. Blood Diamond Control, for instance, never really had card draw, and it was a big problem. You needed to have Pact of Pain, and it cost a lot of health for each card, like 2 health for each card. Now this is something that draw 2 cards for 3 resources. Pact of Pain was 2 resources, 2 health for 1 card. This is 2 health for 2 cards at 3 resource cost. So and there's some random upside in there. So I think this can see play. I think this is playable. This is a card draw. Oracle Song was played, so if Oracle Song was played, this has a place as well in constructed. That is for sure. This one is a lot more narrow, but it's still draw 2 cards for 3 with some other random upsides. So I think this is good enough. There's not a lot of these effects around to be played with. Alright, now where do we go from there? The next one is diamond, and this one is something. So 2 costs, whoa, 2 costs. What happening here? 2 costs, 1 diamond threshold. This is a quick action. Yeah, there's a lot of cards where you know the effects are not that great, but there's one that is good, and the rest are situational. When we end up with a card like that, usually there's enough upside to warrant them being played when the context favor their you know, smaller options. There's less more narrow options, because when these are relevant and you still get a good followed plan, then the card is pretty good. And you often see these making tournament play because of that. And the good players will be able to capitalize on these you know, options and make something really great. Alright, so what do we do with this one? Choose 1. Each opposing champion sacrifices a constant. So right from the start we've got constant 8. So constant 8 in itself is a reserve's power. You never run this into your main unless there's a ton of action, a ton of constant in the meta. However, if constant 8 is attached to something useful that you will use 9 10 out of the 10, and when there's a constant you have the option, it becomes great. And remember, this is a quick action, and it asks to sacrifice a constant. It doesn't target a constant. So if there's only one in play, you play this, they don't have a choice but to sacrifice it. Even though it might be spell shield, you can make them sacrifice it, and that is a big deal. It's not just them, it's not just you removing a constant, it's you making them sacrifice a constant, and that's a whole other ballpark. And don't expect to see that many constant in play either, right? They're very rare cases where you would see like more than 2 or 3, and usually if there's 2 or 3, they're all decently good. The only one that I could see, you know, being in multiples in play, covering for another bigger or more impactful constant, is the Eulogy deck, where you would play a bunch of Dread Harvest that are all constants that also, you know, make sure that you hit your shard drops. But you know, then you play your Eulogy, and now Diamond's Favor is not that great. But even then, removing one of the Dread Harvest would be pretty good if they have a Eulogy in place. So the fact that it's modal is great. So let's see what's the next one. Destroy a random opposing troop with 5 defense or more. Alright, so this is very, very good. 5 defense or more. Hey Frisman, how are you doing tonight? Welcome to the stream. So 5 defense or more. This is very good. You know what's ruling the format right now? Angus with Mama Yetis. Mama Yetis are 5/5. Discard for 2 resources at quick. Make you destroy a random opposing troop. And that's perfect. Hey Roy G, how are you doing tonight? This is great. This is very, very good. Like, there's if you're playing against someone that's going big, being able to destroy one random 5 defense troop is great. And if they have multiples, of course that might be, you know, one might be better than the other, but 2 costs removing one of the 5 defense troop, I can't imagine where this is not a positive trade, right? You're spending 2 resources at quick to remove something with 5 defense. I can't imagine a lot of cards in Constructed where 5 defense is not something significant on the board that you just removed. So yeah, that mode is great. It's circumstantial, but it is good when it happens. And the first line is circumstantial with the constant, but it's pretty good when it happened. So let's see what the turn mode is. The turn mode is, or troops you control get +3 defense. Okay. The first time I read this card, I assumed, because I thought it would be too powerful, that the +3 defense was until the end of the turn. But it turns out that if the cards ends up like that on the live server, this is permanent +3 defense on your troops. This is insane. Like, it's permanent +3 defense on all your troops, or destroy something with 5 defense, or sacrifice a constant? Are you kidding me? This is just insane, right? There's no bad mode in there. Hi Pudding, how are you doing tonight? There's just no bad mode. All upside. I cannot imagine. This has to be a templating error. I cannot imagine that this would be +3 permanent defense. It has to be temporary. And it is definitely first pickable and limited. I mean, there's just +3 permanent defense. If we compare it to the blood one, it's just leagues ahead. Like, not even close. So moles are great. Well, let's just say, you know, this is flexible 3 modes. All right. Removal when it counts. For anything else, there's master cards. There is +3 defense on all of your troop at quick permanently? Question mark. I cannot imagine that this will end up being permanent. If it is, it is. We're in a pretty playable main deck playable territory here for constructed as well, but we'll see. Yeah, that card is very good. I assume, you know what? When I glanced at it, they got revealed while I was working, so I just I gave them a quick glance and that was it. I just assumed that this would be until the end of the turn because it would have been too powerful, and here we are. So for now, since we're doing spoiler review, we're not doing a set review, so we don't have the full context, and we certainly don't know, you know, what will be in the client in the end. So all these things are subject to change, even more so, you know, related to the feedback of the community. So here's a disclaimer, but still. So in limited, 5 defense or more, we need to see what's going to happen with limited. We don't know how many 5 or more defense would be relevant. We already know that if they have 5 defense, they're likely costed higher than likely for 5 cast, right? 4 drops with 5 defense usually are uncommon or rare, unless there's a catch. 5 costs with 5 defense usually have 3 attack or less with some power. You need to have something very special to be like 5 defense and a lot of attack for 5 cost, for 4 or 5 costs. So we're looking more at killing like 5-6 draft. So if the format is very quick, like we have right now, this is not. The destroy would not be that relevant. The constant 8 is not that relevant in limited as well, unless there's a cycle of very good constant. Maybe there will be, but we don't know. So this could be anywhere. This could be anywhere from like reserves card in limited to main deck first pick in limited. We just don't know yet. So. Worst case scenario, this is quick 2 cost plus 3 defense permanently on all your troops. I think this is a decent combat trick though. I think you would play, if it just would be 2 cost, quick action, 3 defense on all your troop permanently, I think you would still play this. And if we evaluate it, you know, in the worst case scenario, the floor is not that low, right? It's pretty decent. So I think I'm going to start with C and C+, like assuming the floor the card is that last mode. This seems to be a decent combat trick. If you can ever get the second mode work as well, you now have a piece of premium removal. So depending on the meta for limited, this might, you know, I would put this as a C+. Well, usually combat tricks are D, so let's just use C, right? In the average deck, if you don't think you'll be facing that many 5 defense troop, C it is. Like, you added 40 plus 3 defense at quick, and this is permanent, so it does matters to stall games. And you know, you have a bunch of small troops, and all of a sudden they have a lot of health, and that's fairly relevant. So, and it could be very useful. Now, in constructed, this is playable. Like, this is conditional removal with added benefit of constant 8. If the threats of the formats have 5 defense, you know, I'm a Yeti, Dino, Crocosaur, we've got, you know, dragons, Might Singer, etc. And you know what? It's not. There's just so many things to kill at 5. You need ways to defend yourself early on into the game, though, and this is where the plus defense comes in. And some amount of the time you have a constant 8. It might just very well be main deckable. We'll see. Can I show over that the benefits of constant 8? And constant 8 matters some portion of the games. This could even be played main deck. Alright. Constructed playable, I'm just going to put reserves in there. But that's it. At the same time, this is a very, very cool reserves card in the sense that if you don't expect to play against a lot of big troops, right? And obviously you don't want a ton of these in your deck because they can only target big troops. So there's that. But even though you're not playing this main deck, you have this card in your reserves that is very good at dealing with big troops. And this is one very specific scenario. And the other scenario is that this card is very good at dealing with constant. And this is another scenario. So I really, really love it because it deals with 2 kinds of problems that are very different. And it's efficient at doing so. And even the third mode is not that bad. You know, on a stall board, giving 3 defense to all your troop might be very relevant. You might be able to, you know, get them in combat and learn, you know, shape a scenario, a situation where you can take great advantage of that. So there's a ton of flexibility on the card, and as a reserves cards, it does it all. Like the +3 defense, if you have a lot of small troops, that makes sense. If you can destroy a big troop, that's great. If you need destroy constant. This is great. So it's like it's a card in your reserves that act as 2 or 3 cards in your reserves. So in a sense, when you put this in your reserves for your diamond deck, you save slots for other things, and this is great. It's like increasing your reserve size, and this is really powerful. This is really powerful of an effect to be able to have. Even if it's just played in the reserves, it's going to be significant in the reserves for constructed. Ruby is not going to be weak at all. It's still going to have Mamayetis, it's still going to have Fireballs, and there's the next favor, the Ruby favor, slots in perfectly in that deck, and it's going to be hella strong in there as well. So Mono Ruby Ingress is still going to be around. It might be 1 turn slower, but it's still going to be scary as hell. Alright, speaking of which, let's go into the next favor. And this is why Ingress is still going to be there. That and the Balad action. It's going to have another shape, but it's still going to be there. Alright, so rubies, and this one is intense. I think this is the best one by good margin. 1 cost, 1 ruby threshold. This is another quick action at uncommon. It reads, choose 1, deal 3 damage to each opposing champion. Each opposing champion sacrifices an artifact or exhausted troops you control get swift strike this turn. Alright, this turn makes a lot more sense. Alright, so this here is insane. For cards that care about actions, this is low cost as well. It's a relevant combat trick. It's 3 damage to them. It gives you reach, and some amount of the time it works as an artifact removal, right? And the big thing here is that it can translate to 3 damage to the face, and that's very, very good. I'm not quite sure how good this will be limited, but giving Swift Strike to all your troops for 1 at quick is going to screw up a lot of combat mats. And and the big thing on a card is that if you don't have use for it, you just hit them for 3, and you might have shortened the clock of 1 turn with that, or just, you know, attack them and finish them with that. So there's just all the modes on that are great. Obviously, you want to play this in an aggressive deck, right? You're not playing this in a control deck. You're playing this in an aggressive deck, and this is a perfect card for an aggressive deck. More suited to aggressive archetypes, but in aggressive archetypes, this is great. The fact that this is 1 cost, Swift Strike to all your troops is going to translate. I'm pretty sure, you know, it's going to easily translate into trades, favorable, you know, troop kills. Imagine you have multiple blockers. Oh, it's exhausted troops, so it's only when you attack. So it's not, you cannot use this on defense, but it's still 3 damage to their face for 3. And if you're playing an aggressive deck, that's going to be great. So I still think this is a high pick in limited. I'm not quite sure that you need to be aggressive, right? If you're not aggressive, you're not picking that card. So it's a good reason to start, you know, drafting cards that are aggressive if you have it. But I'm not quite sure that this is reason to go in Ruby, for instance. So I'm just going to put this as C+. Play this in your aggressive decks. How many artifacts are there in the format? Because if there's a decent amount of artifact in the format, it now becomes really good. Really good in the aggressive decks. It's just a somewhat of a removal option, and play this in your aggressive decks. Okay, in your mid-range decks, as well as a combat trick on offense. The fall back option of 3 to the face for it to always be relevant. You know, just one. If we would have quick action, 1 cost, 1 Ruby threshold, 3 to face, and that would just be it. That might get played from, you know, that would have been likely played in a very, you know, burn aggressive deck. The fact that it's a combat trick, you know, it's still, you know, the way it's worded, it still only works when you're attacking. So in a sense, you want to be aggressive. However, it rewards aggressive decks in 2 dimensions at the same time, and that's really big. It also gives aggressive decks an option to deal with artifacts with no cost. Because if you're playing an aggressive deck, you want cards like that. You want multiple copies of cards like that. Imagine you have 2 in your hand. Your opponent is now 6 health less than it appears to be. That's a very big deal. That's a lot of hit points that you're removing there. So the fallback plan of 3 damage to their face is going to be the main plan a lot of the time. Actually, I think it's just going to be the main plan, and some amount of the time you will use it as a combat trick and be happy with it. You're going to trade it with troops, and when you don't, you're just hitting their face, and it's a quick action. So the opportunity cost, you know, of playing that card is really low. Low opportunity cost. It's just so low that it's just so efficient. Like for one cost, 1 resource, what you get out of it is fairly good. There's not a lot of card that can translate to immediate 3 damage to champion while doing other stuff that are relevant to the game. So it's possible to use it on the defensive with mobilize, but yeah, you need quick mobilize, like declare blockers, use mobilize, then use favor. It's just, it is something that will come up a very small percentage of the time, and good creative players will take, you know, would use it, and it's going to be great. But for the most part, it's just going. It's just a nice card with a lot of modes, and all modes are relevant. And yes, it's going to be relevant in PvE as well. That's a very good thing. We don't even know what kind of equipments it can get, but you know, 1 cost, 3 damage to face, and as an action in PvE is great. Even in PvP, it is great. You know, when we I can paste a lot of comments that I made from Ballad here, just for the fact that this being a low cost quick action, makes it very interesting for a lot of Ruby shells we already seen. the fact that it can both act as an offensive combat trick and direct damage will make this a staple for aggressive Ruby decks to come. Constructed staple in multiple formats for aggressive Ruby decks to come. Like, this card here is going to be a staple in constructed for a very long time. Just imagine the Angus decks that we have right now, and we give them that tool right there, like that card. That would be scary as hell, because if they have any resources open, you don't know if they're going to burn your face. You don't know if they're going to play a combat trick and destroy your blockers, and next turn you'll be left with no defense. And if you're playing any artifacts, like your control deck, and you're playing and the best example is Dark Heart of Nozan, right? The opponent plays managed to survive and stabilize, and on turn 5 they play a Dark Heart of Nozan. You answer by, well, sacrifice an artifact. And you don't even have to sacrifice anything on your upkeep, on your start of the turn. This deals the fact that the aggressive Ruby decks now get a premium action with very low cost that also happens to deal with very well with artifacts, mean that it's going to be very hard to rely on artifacts in your decks if these Ruby aggressive decks are a good portion of the meta. And it's going to be very interesting how we can weave in artifacts in a format where in Immortal, for instance, where you have Angus that are going to be great. They're just going to be better than what they are right now, and they're going to have that tool and the bad ad. That's going to be a very interesting time to be playing Ruby, that's for sure. Even for standard, right? We're not going to have the same kind of Angus. But I'm telling you, Angus losing Fireball and getting this card is great. And I know I keep pointing that way, and on the stream it looks very silly, but I'm pointing just to my third screen here. This is just silly card, right? I'm a bit scared about this card actually, because the implication, all the small implication that it has in constructed, and if there's a card that I'm sure we will see as a staple in constructed for many months and many years to come, is this card. This card is either going to be very good in reserves or very good in main decks, and my bet is in main decks. Like, if you're playing an aggressive burn deck, if you're just playing an aggressive Ruby decks, imagine you have access to that and a few fireballs, and let's say we're playing Immortal. We have access to fireballs, we have access to burns, we have access to this as a quick action, all quick action that does 2 or 3 damage to the face, and then you have a champion power that does 4 damage to the face. And then you add Crackling Bolt that does 3 damage to the face for 2, but also accelerates your champion power. That is a ton of direct damage. A metric ton of direct damage that doesn't cost a lot. We're very close to the critical mass of direct damage where we don't even need Mama Yeti to kill your opponent. You're just going to kill them on turn 3. So yeah, that's going to be an interesting world. After set 6 hits for sure, but this card scares the hell out of me. Really scary card here. It might get nerfed. I wouldn't be surprised, and I wouldn't shed a tear if this would be nerfed to 2 damage to each opposing champion instead of 3. I would be a lot more comfortable with that card if it would be 2 damage instead of 3. Well, we'll see. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Angus are losing. Angus are losing. Are all losing. Not fireball, but burn. But they get this, right? And okay, you're not removing one of their troops, but if you have any troops, which you should, right? You can make them swift strike, and that's a very big deal. That's a big deal. I mean, the other modes are good. There's two modes that are very, and this is why I was commenting, right? This card was made for aggressive decks, and it's improving aggressive decks in 2 dimensions at the same time. It's both give reach and helps combat. I don't see how this card doesn't becomes a 4-of in aggressive Ruby decks. And just think about other shells that we've seen in the past, right? A card like that in a Megbombus deck would be insane. Like, you enable your gobblers, it's an action that you can target with all the prophecy triggers. It's very easy to recur in action compared to a troop as well. There's a ton of stuff that you can do. Like, this card copies itself when you play it because of an elder. There's it being, a quick action for one is very relevant. If you're playing just a burn deck with some Sapphire, then you play Renlock, and all of a sudden this is a cantrip. It can be targeted by Thunderfield Seer. That's a lot of upside on a very small, very efficiently costed package that is versatile. So yeah, this is going to be played a lot in Constructed. In Limited, you kind of need an aggressive deck, but for overall, you'll still be happy by playing one, I'm pretty sure. Most of the time. Most of the time. Alright, so what do we have next? Let's see. Next one is the Sapphire one. This one is a bit more of a puzzle, though. We'll see. So, Sapphire's Favor. It's 2 costs. 1 Sapphire. Quick action again. It is an uncommon as the other ones, and it reads: choose 1. Gain 2 charges. Okay. Gaining 2 charges for 2 at quick is great. We've had gain 1 charges for 2 with some other upside at quick, and that is fairly significant, like Crackling Tide, for instance. Crackling Bolt, doing some very relevant thing for 2 resources and still getting 1 charge. Now, we only get 2 charges, but with some amount of, flexibility on the card, and we need the other modes to be great, because I don't think gaining 2 charges will be the main mode. So let's see. Stun each opposing troop with 1 attack or less. Alright, this does deal with Dreadlings. This deals with a lot of chump blockers, if that's ever relevant for your deck. But it's very narrow of a power, so I don't think this will be the main power as well. So at this point, I'm really relying on the last line of text to be the main reason why I'm playing the card. So the last one is R, interrupt all basic actions. This is a weird way to word an interrupt, but yeah. So of course this is, as the other one, flexible. There's 3 modes. What do we think of the rest? It's a shitty verdict. This is weird. I don't think there's a lot of worlds where we have multiple basic actions on the chains. The only way to have that is for them to be copying themselves, because if they're a basic action, you cannot put more than one on the chain. That's just how it is, right? So the only scenario where, you know, all basic actions is relevant is very limited. So unless they have something very weird in store for us, like a basic action that copies itself twice or something, then yeah, this is very narrow. But interrupting a basic action in itself it might be fairly relevant. So you know, the question is, how many basic actions are relevant in the format? How relevant is it to ramp your champion power to your strategy? The one attack troops with, you know, some amount of the time there will be dreadlings to deal with, but for the most part I don't think so. Sorry, I don't think this is what you're doing. For the most part, might be wrong. Maybe the dreadlings will be so present, will have such a big footprint on the format that we need to deal with them, and this is a good way to do it. But for the most part, yeah. Mass playing of basic actions from something like play all actions in your crypt. Well, yeah, that's the whole point, right? There's not right now. I don't think we have a single basic action card that put multiple basic actions on the chain. You need to be doing something very crazy for that, and it's either going to cost you a lot of resources or it's going to be extremely narrow of a scenario. So how do we like this in limited? I think the main mode in limited for that, it's going to be, of course we need to know how many, you know, again, how many basic actions are relevant in limited, right? And the other mode is how significant is your champion power. We already have high charge cost champion powers that are extremely impactful over a game. If we just look at the champions that we have in game right now, not counting the new ones that have been revealed, but this would be for another time. Just give me a second there. Just trying to look at the champions here. High cost charge powers. We've got the banner champions that have like 5 charge cost that could be played on turn 3, which would be fairly significant. Like, you're losing your turn 2 to gain 2 charges, but in exchange, you're putting a very powerful constant on the board that is going to have a, you know, recurring effect. That could be good enough. We have the Bloodspinner Zorat with the Dread Banner. Next one that costs 5 or more. You know, even just Gorn, right? If you have a few evasive threats, you play Gorn, and you play a Sapphire's Favor, and all of a sudden the next turn you just play another Rage 1 trigger. That could be very significant. A free activation of Gazog, I don't. It's not going to be in the format. Let's see, champions. We will have Hero Fall, and in limited we'll have Hero Fall, and that's it. So Ada the Apparitionist, although she has 3 Diamond Threshold triggers, so that's not too great. Marshal Josephina, being able to get a trigger on turn 2, or get a second trigger on turn 6 might just be very significant. 2 Tomahawks, really cool. 6 cost, 6 charge for a Sacred Banner that generates a value every turn. If you can get that on turn 4, all of a sudden it's a hell of a lot more impactful than on turn 6. It costs you a card, but the effect that you get is fairly strong very earlier in the game. Angus, too much threshold requirement. Another one that's very interesting is the Araza, the Incinerator, with 7 cost Burning Banner that provides 1 attack and speed to all your troops. Now if you can get that on turn 5, that's starting to be scary, like +1 attack and speed on all your troops as of turn 5 is very scary, like very scary. It's another it's another activation of Lysander the next turn. Sharpshooter Sass is 5 cost, although you don't want to do this her power when you have cards in your hand, so I'm not too keen on that champion yet. Can Stygian Slate does summon a Warbot for 4 resources, but you need to have 3 artifacts, so it doesn't really make sense to accelerate. It does make sense to have a second activation on turn 6 though. Mazak, another Stern on the next turn might be very good. I think with Mazak this is pretty good, because it's close to be, if you're playing Mazak, gaining 2 charges is very close to just stun target exhaust troop. So that could be great. The one I really like though, if you have other means to, or multiple means to ramp your shards, your charge power, is Nineveh. Because Nineveh, I'll go with Nineveh. Nineveh, for 9 charges, summon an Arcane Banner that says at the start of your turn draw a card, so you draw 2 cards per turn. It's going to be very hard to lose a game where you draw 2 cards a turn. So this gaining 2 charges, enabling Nineveh, might be something very relevant. Grandfather Elk at 3 threshold is a bit unlikely. Mending Banner for 4. If you're playing Wild, it could be a Mending Banner on turn 3. That's not the end of the world. Shoku, it's a free Dreadling, and that's not that great. Caliban is interesting though. Being able to play Caliban on turn 3 is something. However, you do want to play Caliban on something that is bigger. So in essence, that could be just that you are ramping into the second activation on turn 8. That's a bit far-fetched. So where do I see 2 charges? I clearly see it with Elk. Nineveh is good. Nineveh. Mazak is great. Can Sticker in Slate can be okay. 2 free 3/3s by turn 5. If you manage to have the triggers for both, like even if you just do it, activate the power on turn 4, and then on turn 6 you activate it again, you got 2 3/3s, 2 free 3/3s for your champion power activation. That seems super powerful. Like this is half of a 3/3 there that you get from champion power activation. That could be very good. Lysander, this would be good with. Haraza, it would be okay on turn 5. I think Araza's power on turn 5 is very cool. However, if you draw it late, it's kind of a bummer. Angus, maybe. 2 Tomahawks are really... all the banner champions in general, but mainly the 2 Tomahawks and Blood Spinners are at. being able to play these banners on 2 turns earlier is so big of a deal. Getting another activation of Josephina very, earlier in the game, or 2 activations in a row might just be game winning by itself. So I think that the main mode is going to be, you know what? Looking at the champions that we have right now, and considering the new ones, I wouldn't be surprised that the main mode of this is gain 2 charges, and that might just be powerful enough for it to be significant. We'll see. So, how significant is your charge power? I like these. I think this is going to be a D. There's a low chance that you're going to be able to interrupt a basic action. I think for the most part you're going to weave that action into your sequencing so that you use it in on a turn that you didn't spend all your resources, and you're going to get a free ramp of your champion power that your opponent is not expecting, and you're going to get them. Like that's going to be what's get them. But for the most part, it's going to be very, very circumstantial. All modes are not that great. But yeah, getting more activation of champion powers might be very good. I mean, the 3-cost champion powers are very good. Like you use your Gorin activation on your 2-drop on turn 3, then attack, and let's say you play a 3-drop, right? And on the 4th turn, on their turn they kill your 2-drop with the rage trigger, and then on the 4th turn you play Sapphire's Favor, you activate Gorn again on your 3-drop, and still attack with your 3-drop with rage, and you still have 2 resources open to play a 2-drop or to do something else. So this is the kind of line that I like with that card. Or it's just that you're 2 turns away from getting your banner in play for 2 tomahawks, and all of a sudden, between turn 2 and 4 you played a Sapphire's Favor, so that on turn 4 you play your banner that generates a valor every turn, and starting from turn 5 you start getting a banner every turn. Not a banner, you start getting a valor every turn. That could be pretty darn good. And if you manage to, stall a game or stay at parity long enough, this could enable another banner in by turn 10. Yeah, that's too much, right? Yeah, 6 plus 6 minus 2 is 10. Yeah, that's way too much. Not for the banners that cost 6, but a banner that's cost 5, it could be on turn 8 with Bloodspinner Zorat for the second activation of the champion power. That might not be too far-fetched. We'll see. Is this playable in constructed though? I'm going to put a big question mark. Well, I say playable in the sense that, yeah, that's just too circumstantial. So non-playable. This card is very narrow. There may be a very specific hit type that uses it. Likely mainly it's a ramp card with marginal upside. There may be a specific archetype that uses it mainly as a ramp card with marginal upside. As a ramp card for champion power with marginal upside. Keep an eye out on cards that cares about charge gain. All of a sudden, you know, if you have an Arena Regular in play and you play this, you do 2 damage to your opponent, and that's significant. That is not nothing, right? We'll see. Alright, next one is the last one, which is Wild's Favor. So, Wild's Favor. This is 3 cost, 1 white threshold. It is a basic action. It is an uncommon. And it reads, choose 1. Summon 4 Dreadlings. Summon 4 Dreadlings for 3 is very significant. You know, it enables most of the scrunch cards that we have. 4 Dreadlings attacking is a lot of triggers for assault cards. It's a lot of fodders for sacrifice effects as well. It does a lot of stuff. Gain 7 health. This is likely going to be the fallback plan. Create 2 Valor and put them into your hand. Alright, so the white one does interact with Dreadlings and it does interact with Valor. It really feels like they're just translating these mechanics into set 6 as a continuation of what they started, and these are very characteristics of the 2 faction. We already saw some cards caring about Valor. It would be extremely surprising that we don't see things that cares about Dreadlings as well. And we also still have the last pack of drafts as a set 5 pack that do care about Dreadlings for multiple reasons. So, assuming there's enough synergy in either way, you're playing 3 costs for 2 Valors. If you have ended synergies with Valor, that's great. If not, this is like a bad pump spell, this is a bad health gain spell, and this is an okay create Dreadlings card. So we'll go with flexible, 3 modes. We'll go with all options are low impact on their own, but with high synergy potential. So look for synergies with its Valor or Dreadling creation. This one, I think, is going to. I think you're going to play this in a good portion of your wild decks, but I don't think it's going to be an exciting card. I think this is a D+, and if you have any ways to capitalize on Dreadlings and or Valor, it goes way up in value. So it's highly dependent on the content of the limited format, and we don't have that context yet. So I know by saying that I don't really like Wild Favor. Very least it's the worst of the 5 favor to me. Yeah, it's like the power level of the wild one on its own is not that great, but at the same time I feel like this is one of the highest potential in terms of synergies, because if your deck cares about Dreadlings or Scrounge or Assault, this is very good. Like if you have an Assault card in your hand, you're going to get 4 triggers of Assault while getting in more or less 4 damage and filling the crypt for Scrounge. So if you have, if your deck cares about these things, it's going to be a very good card. If your deck cares about Valor with a lot of, you know, conditions on Valor or triggers that cares about Valorous troops or things of the sort, being able to create Valors in Wild is might be great. In the Diamond, wild archetypes that we add, if we still see these things being pushed into set 6 for limited, there might be, it might be okay as a follow plan. So if you have, I think that, decks that will care about these effects to improve them, this card will be good. The follow plan of gaining 7 health is not that great, but it does matter some amount of the time. Usually it will buy you a turn, one more draw step or something along these lines, and that can be okay. You'd rather have a good card in your hand though, most of the times, instead of just drawing 7 and hoping to draw another one, but this is kind of the fallback mode, so my guess is that we're going to play this for Dreadlings, because 4 Dreadlings for 3 as a basic action seems to be okay. It's a lot of impact on the board for 3. So blood favor are more widespread, making the opponent discard is good, drawing is good, removing crypt. Yeah. No, blood is going to be played. Blood is going to be played in Constructed. I'm telling you, these kinds of cards, they are played at one point or another. If you're playing a blood deck and you're playing a control deck, Blood Diamond usually doesn't have access to card advantage, and this is card advantage with some amount of the time, with some marginal upside some amount of the time, and this for a control deck, it's what a control deck wants. So I would even go as far as to say that in Blood Sapphire control deck you may want to play 1 or 2 of these instead of playing 4 Oracle Sons, for instance, just to have some amount of flexibility with what you're doing with the card. If the marginal upsides are relevant some amount of time. So we'll likely not play this card in your wild decks unless are lacking playables or having high synergies with one or more of its modes. The first time I read the card, I was like, wow, this is very, very good for limited, but I've been quickly dragged back down to earth, and yeah, I still see, in set 5, when you play wild, you either get Valors or you either want Dreadlings, and in those 2 scenarios, I think we would play this card, at least the first one, most of the time. But with set 6, we don't know. But if there's enough support, and maybe even more support, then it might just be very good. This is just not non-playable, not powerful enough. I say that if it is played, it will likely be played for its first mode, Dreadlings. Because in decks that cares about troops on the board, that wants troops to sacrifice, that relies on scrounge, things of the sort, having access to being, on turn 3 being able to create 4 troops and sending 4 troops to the crypt is very, very significant. That is big number of troops for 1 turn, and it's with an action nonetheless, with all the interaction that we have with actions. So it's 1 card that generates 4 bodies, that sends 4 bodies into your crypt. That is a lot of resources to work with. If you have ways to sacrifice your troops, for instance, to generate, say, resources or damage, this becomes high synergy. And then if you have synergies with how many troops you have in your crypt, you just added 4. That might make a lot of difference for some amount of cards that cares about the number of troops in your crypts, for instance. So if the synergies are high enough, it does create 4 Dreadlings, and this is not a small amount. And the fallback plan is gaining 7 health or 2 Vatters. I don't see this being played in limited, in constructed, but if it is played, I'm pretty sure it will be because of the Dreadlings. Because 2 Vatters for 3 doesn't seem to be enough. I think the Ruby is outstanding. I think that the Ruby one is outstanding. I think it's going to be a stable and constructed for aggressive decks, for Ruby decks, for a very long time. We have had 2 archetypes where this card would be a 4 of, Megbumbus and Angus, and that card will be played in Angus in Immortal. I would bet on that. I'm convinced that the Ruby's favor is going to be played in Immortal, and it's going to be played in Standard as well. You have a very aggressive Ruby deck. It provides reach, it provides combat trick, and some amount of the time you have access to Artifact 8 in the main deck. That's one hell of a card for aggressive decks. I'm no professional though. I certainly don't have the records or the tournament results to back my claim. So I'm just a bit of a no-namer on Twitch, just reviewing cards and just speaking, just speaking my mind out while I'll try to figure out these cards, and hopefully that helps you guys as well. But I cannot see a world where the Ruby's favor is not a staple in aggressive Ruby decks of the future. Void up to 1 target. Huh. That's a weird one. I don't think I have read this one before. This one is weird. Alright, let's go with this one. Hope, and that would be the last one. I didn't have a lot of time tonight, so Hope on the Horizon. This is a weird card. 3 cost, 1 diamond threshold. Doesn't have a faction. This is a constant. This is a rare. And it reads, at the end of your turn, void up to 1 target troop you control, revert that troop, the end of each opposing champion's turn, put each troop voided by this into play. Okay. So you play this, and it starts taking effect at the end of your turn. You remove 1 of your troop, which is pretty bad. And then you don't have that troop for your whole for the opponent's turn, and then you get it at the end of their turn, so that you have it on your board on your turn, so you can attack it with it. So I'm guessing that the first main use of this will be on an attacker, right? So you attack with an evasive attacker. At the end of your turn, you remove it, you void it. It's out of the board, and then at the end of your opponent's turn it returns back, so that you can attack with it again on your turn, and at the end of your turn you just remove it, so that they're never able to kill it with basic speed removal. They're not able to interact with it on their own turn, never. That could be okay, I guess. ish. It's a troop you control. If this would be a troop you don't control, that could be something. But okay. Keep an eye out on deploy effects. That's the first thing, right? If you want to stack, like if you have Buccaneer on the board and then you play that and you have a free Buccaneer effect every turn, that's awesome, right? And there's going to be a lot of cards with deploy effects that you will be able to recur, and that's going to be great. Good with evasive attackers, because if you have evasive attackers, you can attack with them and then you void them and then you get to attack with them yet again. Resets reverts a troop every turn. It's a way to revert a troop every turn. And there might be troops with one-shot powers or things of the sort that could be very good with that. That's great, right? Just thinking about that Ruby 3-drop Transmuter, right? That has a one-shot that transforms one card in your hand into a random Ruby action. If you have this in play and you target a Transmuter, it means that you can transmute every turn using, you know, a resource or something along these lines from your hand to make them something else that is great. So that would be a very cool interaction. Any troop that generates valor when on deploy is great with this one. So you'd get a free valor every turn, and you can still attack with the troop if you need to. What else do we have? Do we have come into play that stuns or exhaust or something along these lines? That would be... that could be something nice. It's up to one, so you're not forced to do it. You can just you can just ignore the text if you want to. You're not bound to use it. It's at the end of your turn, up to one target. So that's a weird one. How do we play with that? There's a 3 valor wide troop for 5/2. Oh, that's true. There's the witch. I think there's enough, right? So if we do that in diamond, what do we have in diamond with care to recur? Any diamond troop that generates a valor would be good. So Ghost Mage and other things like that would be okay. Even the captain, for that matter, right? So I guess in diamond we have enough. Diamond we have the we have that underwater troop with a socket that exhausts a troop when it comes into play. So at their end of turn, you exhaust one of their troop every turn. That would be very, very strong. And I know we're reaching out for the best case scenario here, but you know we need to know if the best case scenario is just good enough, right? So in diamond, I think we have enough targets. What do we have in ruby? We have the transmuter. We do have ruby cards that generate valor when they come into play. What else do we have in ruby? We have, wow, okay. If you have this with a lava shaper, your opponent is going to hate you. Like, it's going to hate you so much. Recurring the recurring the lava shaper is going to be stupid. Okay, so Ruby, we have cards. We have like the Intimidator. We have the Firebrand. We have the Lava Shaper. We have a decent amount of stuff. We have the Transmuter. So Ruby is good. So Diamond and Ruby are okay. Wild, there's a decent amount of creating Valor when they come into play. That is good. What else do we have in Wild? We have creating 3 Valors every turn, which is insane. With a 5-drop. Anything with a socket really works really great with this if you have Valor creation on a socket, for instance. What else? Okay, so Wild, I think there's a decent amount of targets for Wild. Blood, we have... Blood, there's a lot more scrounge than anything else. There's no Valor creation in Blood. I don't think Blood synergizes very well with this because of the revert. If it wouldn't revert, the scrounge triggers would be nice, but what do we have in Blood? Hey, Peace Tinker, how are you doing tonight? I don't know, this card is there's... So, best case scenario I think is good enough. How easy it is to get in a scenario where this works. The fact that it also works with evasive troops to make sure that your opponent cannot interact with them once you attack with them, because when you attack with a troop, it's exhausted, it cannot block, right? So it's more or less useless until your next turn. So it's a way to protect your attacker. It's a way to capitalize on deploy effects, and it's a way to capitalize on revert. It's a small portion of the options, but it's still a portion of the options, right? So it's not exactly a fate level to rebel, but it's really bad. I don't think it's really bad. That's the thing, right? Because what you need is something that has a good come into play that you can capitalize on. In which case you would likely not want to be blocking with it. So not being in combat, being able to block in combat, that's okay, right? If you have a good target with a deploy, not being able to block with it and just getting the deploy effect every turn is likely going to be a good trade. If you have an evasive attacker, this is protection for your evasive attacker. However, it does revert it, and there's a lot of modification going around. And what makes evasive attackers good usually are the modification, namely Gorn or Valors. So it reverts an evasive attacker like a 2-cost flight attacker. That could be a thing, right? Make sure that they cannot remove it. I don't know. It protects your bomb. Lava Shaper is the dream, right? Raker is the dream. Crocozor. Recurring Crocozor that attacks and just come back at the end of their turn is scary. Euros, not so much. It reverts. So it's always going to be a small Hierophant. Unless you have gems that creates things when it comes into play. Now we're talking, but... Crocozor is scary as hell. Like, oh, you know what? Not Crocozor. Balthazar. You get a Balthazar trigger every turn? That could be cool. That could be very cool. Trial of Fate, all in the Infinity, Circle of Preservation, all the Ascension, and now this. Clearly X is planning a bad rare plus constant diamond deck. It might be a conspiracy. Carnosaur might be okay. Buccaneer is great. Resurrection is not bad though. Resurrection is a high cost card, but it has a very significant impact. Resurrection wins games when you play it. It's just very high cost. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you play this unlimited? That's the big question. Because I'm going to put non-playable in constructed for sure. But do you play this unlimited? I don't know. I think it's going to be a D. Like, you only play this in your deck if you have high amount of deploy / evasive threats with no modifications / uses of self-revert for it to be significant. Even then, would you lose your third turn, your 2-drop to start gaining these triggers every turns? That's a big ask, right? You play this, the sequencing is horrible for limited. You play your 2-drop. Let's say you play a dancer, right? That creates a Vader. A 2-drop, 2/2/4/2 that creates a Vader. On your turn 2. On your third turn, if you have a good attack, you attack, right? And then you play this. Now you remove the 2-drop from the board. It cannot block. And the next turn you get another Vader. And the next turn you get another Vader. And the next turn you get another Vader. Okay, I guess. Ghost Mage is a lot more interesting, because if you have a Ghost Mage and then you play a 2-drop, now you have 2 Vader in hands. On the third turn you play this, and you start racking up the Vaders. Maybe? I don't know. I don't think... Yeah, this is just... not to set up, and opportunity cost too high. It's just too high. I would love to have my Azure Fate Sorceress with damage and something else come into play every turn, but I don't think that's realistic. With Cerebral Domination, you could make something very... One doesn't make you void your whole hand and board. Yeah, I guess. That's a weird card. Let me check something. You know what? I may have more time than I anticipated. Work seems to be very quiet right now, so... I need to be watching something for work while we're doing this, but right now it seems to be quiet enough, so I'll take a risk and I'll continue to stream. I may have to abruptly end the stream, but I think we have a few more minutes for other cards. This one is weird. I don't think we're playing this, but it's going to be a fun card to use and limited for sure. Oh, this one is big though. This one is great. This one is super great. Let's see. Now we're talking. Now we are talking. Tenant Keep. Watcher. This is a 2-cost 1-diamond threshold troop. There's no faction. It is a gargoyle. It is a common with 3 attack, 2 defense. It has flight and defensive. And while you control a talent keep hunter, or another tenant keep watcher. This may attack as though it didn't have defensive. That has to be one of the best diamond comments. Going to call it defensive. Defensive with an S, not a C. Here as well. Okay. Do we like this card? I feel that we like this card. I mean, is linked to the hunter, but it seems fine. Hunter does gives +1/+1 to all of these, so that's insane, right? If you play this on turn 2 and a hunter on turn 4, all of a sudden you have a 4/3 attacker. And this is one hell of a blocker, though. I mean, it trades with the great majority of 2-drops. It trades with a very good portion of 3-drops. It trades with a good portion of 4-drops with its 3 attack. And it has flight, so it blocks evasive threats as well in the air. I wouldn't mind having this as a blocker for most of the game in my diamond decks. And some amount of the time when it attacks, it just wins games. If you ever play this on turn 2 and another one on turn 3, you're going to wreck your opponent. They're going to need to do something and very quick, else they're going to lose the game pretty fast. It's not going to be 6/6/6, it should be 6/5. This card is good enough to even make tenant keep hunter good. Yeah, I mean, of course, if you have a few of these, I would play the hunter. I would definitely play the hunter, because assuming that some portion of the time this card can attack, it is insane. I mean, if we could get a 2-cost 3/2 flight without any downside or any other restriction, this would be constructed playable. So yeah, 3/2 flight with defensive, it's pretty great, and it trades with everything. So I mean, the deck that will gather like 5 or 6 of these is going to be wrecking people left and right. So great in comes way better in multiples. I guess it goes without saying, but cares about tenant keep watcher. It's just great stat, great good stats. It's just good power level forecast, right? I think that the worst case scenario here, that you just play this troop and it's on the board and it doesn't attack, it's still pretty good. They're not going to go through that card. They're going to have to trade or use a card to remove it, but they're not doing anything. I mean, if you're playing this on turn 2, their turn 3 attacker is not attacking, or they will trade, and it works really great with combat tricks as well. So yeah, that's perfectly good card here. I mean, this is going to be a limited staple. I think this is this. Let's consider that this is going to be a card that is going to be drafted in high enough slot that you're not going to see that many in a draft. If you see one of these late, you start picking these cards, assuming this is one of the best commons you can get in Diamond. If you see one late, you take it, and if you're lucky, you get a few, right? And if you're playing Diamond as your off shard, I'm pretty sure you'd be happy to play any number of talent keep watchers. And if you have multiples, it's great. If you have only one in your deck, it's still fairly decent. It's one very, very good, you know, defensive card with random upside. So I think it's going to be like you're going to play as many as you can in your diamond decks of this card. The one thing that I don't know is would this be a signal that diamond is open or not? Assuming that, you know, if we assume that it goes in in as many copies as possible in every diamond decks, I guess this would be a signal that diamond is open. What do you guys think? I'm going to be with C+. Hey Doc, how are you doing today? I think, yeah, again, for those who just joined, what we're trying to do right now is not to predict what the meta will be for set 6 in Limited and Constructed. We're just trying to analyze the cards, see what makes them tick, try to come up with scenarios where they would be best used, and try to document that so that when we have the full context of the set, we will have a good, we will have a running start, so to speak, about you know, against other players that didn't spend time to look at these cards and try to understand them. We're also trying to, you know, place some grades for Limited on them just to see if we can predict things right. It also helps to serve as a learning tool for me to try and grade the cards, and after the format wraps up, see where I was right, where I was wrong, and for what reasons. And knowing these things helped me become better at evaluating cards. And I strongly believe that if I'm better at evaluating these cards, I'll be better at playing them as well and predicting the meta. Being very successful early in the game has also very high payout, so there's a lot of incentive to spend some time and try to analyze these cards, even though we're not able to predict the full meta because we don't have all the cards. There's still a ton of value to be had to, you know, just dissect these cards right there. Hey Osiri, how are you doing tonight? Welcome to the stream. You know, sometimes we're very off, and if you look back on the shows that we've been doing for the learning experience, I did a show where I looked back on all the predictions and all the assumptions that we've made with set 5 for Limited and Constructed, and we sorted through the whole list, and I kind of flagged the ones where we were right and the ones where we were wrong, and it turns out it makes for a very good learning opportunity to and very good opportunity to try and improve yourself, knowing these. So I think there's a high value in trying to predict things. You just need to make sure that you understand that you're trying to predict things out of context, and being able to quickly, you know, put them back in the right place once you have the full context. But you know, doing the exercise, I feel that there's a lot of value to it. At least there's a lot of value to me. So if it provides value to you guys, then that's perfect. But again, I'm not trying to predict the meta, but it's always fun trying to, you know, trying to put some punctuation mark on cards and see where it lands and see if you're right or wrong. There are some that are easy to predict, of course, but it's great. Like trying to see the potential in cards, and you all know I'm a real life coach, doing some life coaching and career coaching as well. So being able to try and extract the potential in people is what I do, and doing this with the cards really, I really like that as well. It just comes with the package. So here, what do we like? Talent Keep Watcher. I'll just, you know, put a stick on the ground and say, play as many of these as you can in all your diamond decks. That's it. If you have only one, I think you're going to play it. And if you have more than one, you're most definitely playing them. There's no way you're not playing them if you have multiples. So here it is. Constructed. If there would be a way to guarantee that you can attack with it, this is one hell of a true drop for constructed. I think this would be, well, one hell of a true drop. I think this would be powerful enough. 2 cost, 3/2 flight troop would be constructed playable. It's above curve for 2 drops, for sure. Now, most of the time you cannot attack with it. And it's not a good blocker because it raids and then it's off the ground, but print runs do dictate the relative power of each shards, because they, as we've seen with set 5, is a perfect example. The ruby shard is too deep, and print runs do affect the correlation of cards, the context of the cards, and if you have a factor that affects the context of the card, you do affect the value of the cards, the power level of the cards. Because if you have a very good card that is not good in one context against one card, and you always see these, mostly see these paired with each other in the print runs, it greatly devalues the card because you're always seeing it in a context where you have its counterpart always, you know, always in the same, most of the time in the same context. And if you have that same card in print runs where you don't often see the counter in its context, it becomes more valuable as a whole. So I absolutely think that print runs affects the value of cards for that reason. You still have the same, you know, chance of getting each commons, but yeah, print runs do affect the value of the card. So, does it still post print runs information on the forum? I don't recall we're seeing it in set 5. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Fred on X tournaments has print run information. He even has a drafting tool that lets you know which print run you're currently seeing, to be able to know which, some amount of the time, to be able to know which uncommons and commons are missing from the pack. So set 5 print runs are definitely a known thing right now. And it's not surprising, since X does provides with complete information on the draft, of the draft format, of the draft portion of draft. So if you can aggregate all these data for all draft, then you can extract the print runs from them. It just becomes a matter of sample size, and once you have hundreds, you know, once you have tens of thousands cards, then yeah, you get a print runs. Oh, true, Angmar. I'm not saying that this is the most defining factor. The only thing I'm saying is that print runs do have an effect on the, you know, power of cards. But this is a small effect, but it does have an effect. More so with commons and uncommons, of course, but I don't think this affects rares at all, because there's only one rare, so print run would never affect the rares, but it would affect the commons. Oh no, print runs are necessary. If you want to do a crazy exercise, you can go on x.tcg browser, and there they have a draft simulator, and it is 100% random without print runs. And if you start racking some draft, you will see that the draft format becomes extremely erratic. There's so much variance in it. Between the good draft and the bad drafts, it becomes really insane really quickly, and you have a very, very high difference between the best deck and the worst deck of a draft pod. By having print runs, what you do is that you make sure that there's always a good mix of removal and efficient troops, and also a good mix of shards in your packs, right? Because it not only dictates what kind, bundled cards together, it ensures that you have a good spread of each kind of shards together as well. So print runs makes for a 100% more enjoyable limited format. That's something that's a quality of life. If it will all be random, it would be insane, and draft wouldn't be that fun. Forest to random. I don't know if print runs happens with the default common and uncommons you get for Evo. That would be an interesting thing to investigate. I'm going to say non-playable here. Just setup cost too high. You need to have multiples. They're good. So opportunity cost, I mean, you do want to have as many as you can in your deck, but setup cost is just too high. I don't think we're going down that road. With that, keep watcher. Give me a second here, making sure that work isn't going crazy right now, and then we go with at least another one. Yeah, you know what? I will have to end this there. Work is demanding attention at this point. Oh, very short stream, but we were able to go through a decent amount of cards, right? 1, 3, 8, 9 cards tonight. Expect a review of these cards on Sunday shows, Sunday morning shows, of course. And I'm going to try to see if I can weave in another small stream before Sunday to keep up with the spoiler season that is in high gear right now. I mean, we've had how many spoilers just today? Last update Tuesday, like we've had how many spoilers today? We've got we've got a favor cycle. This is where it comes from. Okay. But I mean, in the past, since last Friday, we've had 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16 cards in our champions revealed. There's a decent amount of support cards so far. I mean, things are going pretty great. Yep. Love it. Love it. Spoiler season is in high gears. We're unlikely to see any released on next week though, so hopefully we get it soon, but the set is looking to be pretty good. I wish you guys a great night, and stay tuned with Twitter. I'll be, if I ever do another surprise stream, I'll be sharing it there. Print and AA in packs Sunday. Will probably never happen, and I feel like it might. That's a weird thing to wait for. We're gonna do 4 or AA. There's special cards. There's alternate arts. 4, I'm not sure. There was a thing with a Kickstarter that was double back. So. And they mentioned that there might be achievements to be reached with individual cards that will unlock things. I found that idea very, very cool, to be honest, but it might just be overwhelming. But again, I really have to go now, so thanks for joining, guys. Really appreciate it. Keep an eye on Twitter for additional streams this week. I'll try to weave in one. Likely tomorrow night or Thursday night, or maybe both if things got good enough for me with work. So we'll see. Take care, guys. Have a great night.